All right, welcome into another episode of the News4JAGs podcast. I'm Jamal St here alongside Justin Barney. The Jaguars have been working through the third phase of their offseason, so that means OTAs, organized team activities. OTAs, I always think about, they're kind of like, you try and figure out how to explain this to somebody who doesn't know what they are.
Yep.
And I always say it's like a return to football, because before that you have voluntary workouts. That's just like gym stuff. They can run together, but they can't do anything with like a ball or that looks like football. In this, now they can do things that look like football. It's not football.
It's not football.
It's not football. But it can look like it.
They wearing bucket hats and stuff yesterday. Tank Bigsby was wearing a bucket hat this week. The guys would run around with hats on backwards and stuff. I thought Josh Peterson make a nice sideline grab with his hat on backwards. So it's kind of a low key, almost reminds me of like a backyard football game kind of thing with guys. You know, kind of low stress. And if the NFLPA gets its way, hey, we may not see OTAs like this anymore at all. So another interesting caveat of that, maybe earlier training camp and the scrapping of OTAs. I don't know how coaches and assistants feel about that.
No, I don't know. Look, they're talking about training camp starting in like mid-June.
Oh, man.
I was like, oh,
Please,
my gosh. No,
Please,
I'm not ready for that. I don't think the player there were a couple of players that were online on social media saying, players don't want that. Who wants that?
Man.
Like training camp starting in June, that sounds intense. That sounds intense.
Man, just from having covered training camps before and seeing how tough it is in the thralls of June. I mean, as hot as can be out there. And then that just makes you wind your season, start your season so much earlier. I mean, the NFL season's already 18 weeks long, the regular season 18 weeks long, 3 preseason weeks before that. It's already long enough, and really there's no buffer. I mean, from making an early June start all the way to January, that's a long season. I'm against that. I think players probably against that, a good portion of them against that too.
I have zero doubt about that they're not going to want that. So as they go through OTAs, we kind of mentioned this isn't football. So I kind of want, one of my things, at least, and this is just something that has like grown on me over the course of this, is I feel like every year during OTAs there are these guys that get the spotlight shined on them. They are these OTA stars. They're the unheralded, undrafted free agent that's going to take the league by storm the next star. And then they get cut in the first round of cuts when camp comes around. So one of my things, and I wrote it in my first OTA notebook that I did after the first Jaguars one, nothing in OTAs should change your opinion. Take everything with a grain of salt.
Yep.
I keep seeing these reports out of OTAs from around the league, not just the Jaguars, where, oh, this guy looks fantastic. Oh, this catch. Oh, this. Like, you have to take into context. First off, they're in shorts. This is not football. They're in shorts and a shirt. And you mentioned guys wearing hats, not even in helmets sometimes. The DBs can't make plays on the ball. The DBs have to pull up, so it's almost like half speed. So there's a lot of things that don't matter. Like, this is more like teaching. This is, do you know the play? When we go out there and line up and it's for real, do you at least know where you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to do?
And that's it. I mean, Doug Peterson, the first day of OTA, your rookie minicamp, he's talking these guys are rookies coming into the league. We've got to make them not rookies. We've got to get these guys out of that college mindset, show them the pro locker room, what it entails. I mean, this is going to be a crash course for a lot of these rookies. And then, oh, by the way, you're talking 90-plus guys in OTAs right now. I mean, this is the blend of the rookies, those first-timers, the guys like Brian Thomas is the undrafted guys that are getting their first really taste of NFL life. And, guys who look good. We've seen it, I mean, time and again in OTAs and rookie minicamp, guys that look really good. They're not around come first week of the preseason. So it's good to see guys like Cephas and who was the tight end guy that I really liked last year.
Garrett Prince.
I mean, guys like that who star in these early workouts and then they're not around even on the practice squad come regular season.
I kind of feel like the get off my lawn guy with this, but that's just kind of how it look. I've been there. Like, as a fan growing up, I remember these guys and all the media's blowing this guy. Oh, he's going to be great, and then he's gone. And we've seen it. We saw it with Kevin Austin Jr. a couple of years ago. I was on board for the Lawan Winningham train. Right. And the stuff doesn't always come together. So I kind of feel like the get off my lawn guy, but it is. But here's the things that you can take seriously. So you don't anything about an offensive or a defensive lineman, throw it out the window. You straight up throw it out the window. They can't block. They're not in pads. There's no contact. It does not matter. If you see somebody say a guy blew up a screen during like 7-on-7 or 11-on-11, it does not matter because the other people across from him really couldn't block him.
Yep. And you know, I saw this week, I saw Eric Armstead. I'm like, this is a big human.
He is huge.
And he comes over and he gets on the workout bike. And he's working out on the bike. And then he gets off the bike and he's got the I don't even know what you would call it, but the big iron piece. You know, it's almost like weights that are attached to ropes.
Yeah, the
and
sled.
He's doing that. And he's looking great. I'm like, man, Eric Armstead is a big boy. He's got some good moves. But again, no pads.
Nope.
He's moving at about 10% of his normal what he would be doing on the defensive line, and it's great. I mean, you like to see Devon Hamilton after his season last year getting in and kind of the burst he has, but this is very primitive, guys are going at 10, 20% of the speed they're going to do even in training camp.
Grain of salt.
Grain of salt. You can look as good as you want, and I mean, Evan Ingram had a big catch, the one-handed grab from Mac Jones. He's not doing that in a game, fellas.
No, he does that during warm-ups. That's something he does for fun because he can. So, like, some of the things that you can take some of the receivers and like some of the stuff that receivers can do, still got to take it with a grain of salt because, again, the DBs can't make plays on the ball. So, basically, as soon as the ball's thrown, most of the DBs are pulled up.
So you're hearing the whistle, too, just about as soon as that ball leaves the quarterback's hand.
Very quickly. So a lot of this stuff, it's really hard to get a real feel. You can kind of look at how big guys are if they've come back in really good shape, see how they're moving, and you see where the coaching staff is using guys. Those are the things that you can kind of learn from OTAs. But any sort of drastic, this guy looks really good is, and we'll get into some of the guys that kind of look okay. But again, you got to take it with a grain of salt. And one thing that you will like that I noticed, and I noticed it this year, the rookies are going full tilt.
They are.
The veterans, on the other hand, are out there like jogging.
Yeah.
Like the veterans are just like, I'm just here. And the rookies are like they're trying to prove something.
Right.
But some of those guys that know they have jobs, know they're going to be on the team, like one guy that's probably going to be starting in the secondary gave up a touchdown. I'm not going to throw out his name because people will freak out. But it doesn't matter because he gave it up to an undrafted rookie because he really didn't care.
It reminds me of what the Pro Bowl has become.
Yes.
Very scaled down. You got guys who do want to show out. Got the guys, Evan Ingram making the nice one-handed catch and stuff. But again, it reminds me of that kind of pace of play where guys are going really scaled down. You may see a burst here and there, but it is really just guys in shorts out there. Again, no helmets this week when we saw them, and in hats, and kind of really just scaled in. Anton Harrison, I saw him working on the bike and kind of doing the same thing that Eric Armstead was doing, the bursts with the weight attached. Really very low-key, low-stress kind of stuff. You know, Doug Peterson, Ryan Nielsen, Press Taylor all have said that, you know, these guys about assignments, knowing lanes, kind of positioning and stuff. That's what you want to emphasize and start to kind of work on in OTAs. Save that hard hitting and stuff. Again, I go back to probably 3 years ago when they were at Episcopal. The hardest hit I saw was on Travis Etienne when he was running on the early Sunday morning practice, and it was like, wow, that is an NFL type hit. We're not seeing those type of hits at all. I don't know if you ever want to see him in training camp practice, but you're not seeing anything like that type of contact at all.
I don't know. I'm excited for these joint practices.
Yeah,
Tampa
me
Bay
too.
coming up here, that's going to get chippy. It's going to get chippy quick.
Yeah.
So we haven't done a Jags podcast since that news came out. So the Jaguars are going to have joint practices with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're playing that preseason game in Jacksonville against the Bucs. That joint practice is going to be here in Jacksonville.
Remember last year was in Detroit?
It was in Detroit. So this is going to be fun. Jaguars fans, look, you know, at some point during that week, more than likely some of those practices will be open for fans to go to. So that's going to be fun for a lot of you to be able to watch as well. And those are the training camp practices where you really start to get an idea of a team because you get to see them compete against someone else.
That's the chippiness. You know, remember last year big storyline was Calvin Ridley and I think Jeff Okudah. Who else was?
It was Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
Chauncey Gardner, yeah. So, I mean, those kind of things. When you get to hit somebody else, that's exciting. Those are always the chippy kind of feisty fire practices where you may see some. I think last year during one of those joint practices, not Jaguars related, there was a huge brawl during
Happens every year.
Happens every year. So you like to see that, and it's exciting because Jaguars fans never get to see that here because those joint practices are always on the road. Seems like they're always out of town. I can't remember the last time one of those joint practices was held here.
There hasn't been one since I've been here.
Right, so that's 5 years.
So at least 5 years, at least. I don't know when the last time before that would have been. But, yeah, so it's been a while. It's been a while, and so that's going to be fun. I think a lot of people are going to look forward to that. So joint practices are looking a little bit farther ahead, but in these OTAs, we've kind of gotten our first glimpses of Brian Thomas Jr. out on the field. Any initial thoughts? I mean, he looks big. He looks fast. Hands have been solid. He's had a few drops along the way, but overall, I think they've been fine. I know there was like a touchdown in the last OTA that he wishes he had back, and then there was like an easy drop in the first OTA that kind of stuck out to me. So there have been a few, but overall, I think he's looked good. He's looked good.
He's looked like a rookie to me, but I think he looks like a high elite blue chip kind of rookie guy. I think Brian Thomas Jr. really gives them something good. And this week was the first time we saw Gabe Davis in that offense as well. He had been out with the birth of his child. So this week has been the first time we saw Brian Thomas Jr., Christian Kirk, Gabe Davis in that mix, and obviously the rotational guys, down the depth chart guys, Parker Washington, those guys, Elijah Cooks, Tim Jones, those guys. But you're talking Brian Thomas Jr., Gabe Davis, and Christian Kirk. I like what I've seen from them. Evan Ingram has looked good. Brian, I've seen him drop a couple passes. But again, OTAs, you're not facing a corner. You're not facing that live contact, the line of scrimmage. It's just been a good glimpse. But I like Brian Thomas Jr., what I've seen. He looks just smooth out there.
Again, lessons learned from people blew it up about Jamar Chase. He was dropping the football. Oh, he couldn't in Cincinnati. We were freaking out about Evan Ingram when he first got here because he dropped some passes during training camp, and look how that worked out just fine there. So there's something to be worried about, but there's not. The drops, I think they can be overstated, and you kind of got to take them with a grain of salt.
Rather drop them now than
drop them now rather than in the games. But overall, his drops haven't been like an epidemic or something like that either.
I was more worried about Evan Ingram when his first time.
Oh, we were all
here,
terrified,
and
we were all worried.
You're thinking, man, this guy can't catch a cold here in camp,
it was
and
bad.
We hadn't even seen the pads come on yet.
And now he's one of the most sure-handed guys we've seen. On this Jaguars team over the past couple of years. I mean, him and Christian Kirk, I think they could have an argument on who has better hands.
Yeah, and Evan, that plagued him early in his career in New York, too. So when that kind of filtered over to Jacksonville, you're like, this is why the Giants got rid of this guy. He can't catch anything.
Yep.
And he's turned out okay.
Yep. So, all right. So that's kind of one rookie. Has anybody else stood out to you?
This week, I saw Cephas make a great catch in the end zone.
Okay.
I've liked him. He's been the undrafted free agent guy. And I like Mac Jones. He's thrown some pretty good looking balls.
I think Mac's your backup.
So I think Mac is, I don't know if you keep three quarterbacks on that roster.
I don't think you do.
I think Mac is probably higher upside than a C.J. Beathard.
Yeah.
I like Mac and what he's shown. Again, Trevor's the guy, no question about that there. But yeah, I think Cephas catching has been nice. I've trying to been paying attention to the undrafted guys more than those name guys because we talk about this every time of this year. Who can make that? Who can be that James Robinson kind of guy?
Right.
With you, the UDFA making this team. There's not a lot of spots for those guys on this roster. Cooper Hodges too is another guy that glad to see him back in that mix. Got a chance to talk to him last week. So. Getting back into that rotation. Ventrell Miller, saw him this week, him being back in action. So Cooper and Ventrell coming off that year lost really to injury.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Look, a couple of things that have kind of jumped. The Jaguars' defensive line is huge.
They are
huge. Mason Smith is a big boy, and
monster.
Jordan Jefferson isn't small. So they added some big guys. You mentioned Eric Armstead earlier.
He looks big.
I mean, he is a big guy as well. So they have got some big bodies on that defensive line. With the defensive line getting bigger, that's always good. Couple of things that I've kind of noticed on that defensive side. So with the change in scheme, Yasir Abdullah was an edge previously. He's working out with the linebackers almost exclusively. I haven't seen him with the edge group yet. So, but while Miles Cole is listed, Miles Cole, the rookie, is working out with the defensive ends with Trayvon Walker in the group. So that's interesting-ish because I know they still say maybe they'll move Yasir around and have him work on the edge, some maybe in passing situations. I haven't seen him work with them on the field.
Which is disappointing to me because last year I thought was that redshirt year for Yasir, but training camp last year you thought Yasir could be that. I think Mike Caldwell, then he referred to him as the fastball. He would be that guy that blur off the edge in the situation, and he just did not materialize to that. So to see him moving from that edge position, which he was drafted to be, that kind of help for Trayvon and Josh, to a linebacker, which Jacksonville just doesn't need another one of. A little bit little bit concerning because you need a guy, another edge guy to me.
I think he's going to be technically your starter. I think he's going to be starting strong side backer. I think he's the third linebacker.
Okay, interesting.
In a 4-3.
All right.
I think you got Foyer in the middle. You're going to have Devin Lloyd as your weak side backer. Those are your two that stay. And then if you want to go in your base defense, I think Cyr is your starter.
Who's your other edge guy in the 3-4?
And
Who's your other edge guy when you're doing these hybrid defenses, these 3-4 fronts?
Josh and Trayvon.
Trayvon, where does Cyr fit in?
I'm saying Cyr's not on the field.
He's not?
Okay. I mean, they're a base 4-3 defense. They're going to be a base 4-3. So if they go into base, your third linebacker, I think, is Cyr.
Cyr. Okay.
Yeah, and what your front four is what Josh, Trayvon, Eric Armstead, and
Roy.
we'll say probably Devon.
Devon? Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Devon. I think Armstead and Roy play the same spot. Roy's a rotation guy now.
That's true. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, they'll probably throw out some 3-4 looks, but if you throw out a 3-4 look, you're going to stand up Josh and Trayvon.
So when your last year when you had a Caleb on as kind of that backup guy,
yes,
getting in there, who is that role this year?
I think it's a little bit up for grabs.
And we're talking 15 snaps a game. We're not talking about a heavy.
I don't think you can give Trayvon and Josh another year of work like you gave them last year. I think at some point this team has got to find a third pass rusher.
That's my question. Who is that?
Gibson.
Yeah.
Right now it's Gibson.
Okay.
It's the guy from that they signed from the Titans. He was with the Bears at one point. Apparently he was with Shuey, Coach Shuey when he was with Chicago, and they know what he's bringing. For whatever reason, injuries held him up there in Tennessee. What's his name? Sean Gibson? Travis Gibson. Travis Gibson. I think he's your third right now. I think that's your built-in third. Miles Cole's a 7th-round pick who, I mean, he has basically his measurables say he's Trayvon Walker.
He's a freak.
Yeah. Measurable-wise and trait-wise, he's Trayvon. Production-wise, he hasn't done any of it.
Right.
So, it's like, can we get this guy coached up? Miles Cole would be in the conversation. I'm trying to think about who else is even in that room.
I think if you move on from Cyr, I mean, I just don't know who the.
Cyr's not in that mix.
Cole is a massive project. He is a project. He looks. I mean, his measurables are through the ceiling. That guy is a freak. But does he have? Can he make that transition? I do think you need. Caleb Vaughn wasn't that missing ingredient for that Josh Trayvon kind of spell, that third fastball, that third pass rusher. I just don't know who that guy is on this team right now. I think you have to have one of those long term. You've just not had one. You just have not had one. Caleb Vaughn wasn't it, but you need some Josh Trayvon support. And I just don't know. I mean, is it Gibson? Is it Miles Cole? You bring him along. I just don't know who that guy is.
Who am I missing? Who else is on that roster that I'm missing at that spot? I'm trying to think. There's somebody with some potential, right?
I don't know.
Is there?
It's not.
There might not be. Hold
on.
Let's see. You just look. I for whatever reason, I think right now it's Gibson. I mean that's your built-in. I don't know if there's anybody with some upside. You're right. I'm thinking about it.
I don't think so.
I'm pulling up the roster anyway because I'm already this far into it. Tyler Lacey's more DT than D end, I think. Yeah, that's a group, ain't it?
Yeah, that's nobody. There's nobody in that. Caleb Vaughn wasn't the missing ingredient, but he was.
Maybe DJ Coleman. He's tall and lanky. They kept him around all last season. I mean, I've heard they like DJ Coleman, but we haven't seen DJ.
Yeah, there's nobody. To me, there's nobody on that roster to be that pseudo third pass rusher. Again, 10, 15 snaps a game.
That's the spot where I think you bring in a guy. I think they need a veteran off the street. Like, it'd be fun to bring in somebody at corner. It'd be fun to bring in somebody at receiver. I think you need that third pass rusher to come off the street. But Travis Gibson, I think, is solid. Last year, there was hype around. People wanted him in Jacksonville.
Right.
He went to Tennessee, had a down year. And then now it's like a quiet signing. But he could definitely bring you the impact you need as that third pass rusher. And you also got to think they're going to be able to rotate some of those interior guys a little bit more. So that helps on the defensive line a little bit.
So I like the blend of bodies that they've got in. And I think it needs to be said, why are you signing Eric Armstead? You got Roy, you got Devon. These guys rotate. I mean, these are not like the offensive line where you want that starting five with a replacement here or there, a swing tackle, swing guard. you've got to have rotation. These are 300-pound men. I mean, these guys come in and play. They're not, Eric Armstead's not playing every snap of the game on defense. You need those rotational guys. And you mentioned Mason Smith, Jordan Jefferson. Those are some huge individuals, and I think you need that on that defensive line because you're rotating those guys in and out. But I also think to keep some of that mileage off Josh and Trayvon, you've got to have that third pass rusher, and Kayvon wasn't it. Maybe it's Travis, maybe it's Miles. If they can unlock that, I just don't know if a 7th rounder I'm ready to kind of pin the hopes on of saying, hey, he could be my third guy. Again, measurables look great. He looks great. He looks like a Hulk, but
he's a big boy.
You got to have those moves too.
Yeah, look, there's got to be something there. We'll see. And I mean, I think part of it, maybe they do want to give that heavy workload to Trayvon and Josh, but you're always one injury away. So we'll see. That's just something that I think that's something that it's going to be tough to solve ultimately. They'll have to go to the street and decide they want to sign somebody. How they side on that is it's taking snaps guys, away from their guys.
Yeah, you got Unique and Ngakoue types. Those guys that are on the market would be a good addition training camp-wise. I mean, Unique is not going to come back here and play Josh Allen kind of snaps. But, again, just a change of pace guy who could come in on 3rd down and get to the quarterback. And you could spell Josh. You could spell a Trayvon. Yeah, an Arden Key kind of guy who could give you those 20 good snaps a game where he's going 100 miles an hour.
Arden Key's perfect. That's what you need. You need an Arden Key. We'll see if maybe they can find that Arden Key. Maybe Travis Gibson was right in that same vein. Like, nobody was throwing a party when they signed Arden Key, really. I legitimately remember sitting in the sports office, and I was like, why, Arden Key, what are you talking about? Like, pass rushers, if they're good, I was talking it down, and then there it was. He was Arden Key, and he had an impact on the Jaguars. He changed the city, changed the town, changed the culture.
That's right. Yeah, he got the stadium deal done.
That's right. He got the stadium deal done. It was all Arden Key, the house that Arden Key built.
That's right.
So we'll see. Look, I'm trying to think about who else is stood. Jarian Jones. For as much as I want to say, DBs it's hard for a DB to stand out during OTAs. Jarian Jones has caught my attention. He's competitive. He's sticky. He makes it look easy. Like some of the other guys, you can see like they're some of the other guys that are trying. You can tell they're trying. And he just looks smooth and very very simple. They've worked him both inside and in the slot and outside on the edge. There was a rep where they had him in the slot going against Christian Kirk, and I was like, okay, this is what we need to see here.
It was like, last year some of the best matchups were Darius on Ridley or Tyson on Ridley. Some of those were just awesome. But Jarian, I mean, I didn't watch him as close this week as I did the week before, and he looks good. I mean, he looks good, and he was the guy that I had mocked to the Jaguars in round 5. And
there you go.
You were a little late. Mock draft.
You were a little late, though.
I like Jarian at Florida State, and I like him here.
Yeah, look, I think he's good. I think he's going to be a player. I think he's gonna. I don't see how they're gonna keep him on the sideline at this point. But again, very early, grain of salt.
Yes.
But he looks solid. He looks different than some of the other guys that are on the field, and that's what you always look for is guys that stand out because they look different, and whether it be physically, the way they play, and you kind of compare them to the product that's out there. And he looks head and shoulders above some of the rest of the guys. That are out there competing. So I think he's going to be a good player. We'll keep an eye on him. Obviously, a lot can change once things get more physical.
Yeah, when the pads come on, I'm looking forward to seeing the offensive line. I watched them closely out this week on Tuesday and seeing those guys, and they look good. Sheriff looked good. He looks lean. Ezra Cleveland out there looked good. But, again, these guys are running drills right now and kind of going up against air. You're not seeing that, but they look good, and I'm interested to see how, when those pads go on for real, how that offensive line, because again, you had to get stronger both lines. Offensive line to me last year was why this team was as bad as it was on the offensive side of the ball.
All they did was bring everybody back.
All they did, and the addition of Mitch Morse too.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's a good one. He has looked good out there as well. But again, you're blocking against air. You're not going against Armstead and Devon and those guys too. So interested to see. I paid a lot of attention to those guys on Tuesday this week.
Yeah, and things ramp up. Like training camp, they don't have pads on every day, but the competitions, the speed of things is different. Like at the end of the OTAs, none of the guys were like completely drenched in sweat or like out of it.
Right.
By the time they're done with training camp practice, generally those guys are you see it. You see some of them sprinting for the ice tubs.
Yeah.
They're like, can I have a second to get some water before I talk to y'all? Like, give me a minute.
Yeah.
And so it's just different. There's a different level of exertion, different speed. So this is kind of really that introduction. This is that game speed kind of or not game speed. This is practice speed, walk through speed almost. And then they'll ramp it up, and then they're full tilt.
It was not uncommon to see at Episcopal, the night complex, a couple years ago, guys getting IVs after practice.
Right.
You know, Roy, I remember seeing Roy many times last year at the Miller Electric Center. I mean, he's riding in that ice tub right after.
Yeah, we waited to talk to him a couple times.
Yeah.
And he was, got a ice tub, too much. So, look, it happens. And, I mean, like, there was the one video last year of Calvin Ridley running and Zay Jones running right behind him, and that one was one that blew up a little bit. And I remember talking to Zay later. He was like, "Man, I wasn't even done warming up yet." Like, yeah. I said, "Well, I didn't say anything. No one, somebody caught it. That wasn't me." But he was like, "Yeah, look, I wasn't even done warming up yet because they're doing it at a speed, and they're all generally really fast compared to the normal human.
Yes.
So their speed, like they have different gear changes." As opposed to like Calvin, where Calvin practices at what he's going to give you. He's there. That was still early in practice. They was like, man, I wasn't even done warming up yet. I mean, Calvin's fast, but I ain't that slow. I was like, fair enough.
Jaguars immediately wrote Zay out of town after that social media video posted.
My bad. I didn't mean to do that. I do post a few videos.
Yeah, Jamal's video went viral and got Zay.
People just steal this stuff, man. Like PFF just snatched it. Like I did the one Brian Thomas thing. Somebody was like, man, the PFF video has like 800,000 likes or views. I was like, huh? What are you talking about? I'm like, dang. I said, we still out here and they already snatched this video?
Poor Zay Jones. Poor Zay Jones. Thanks, Jamal. You got him out of town. He looked like a slug going through. Calvin Ridley looked like, speeding on the interstate kind of quick.
Man, Calvin practices like that. That is how he is. He's a guy, and he's the kind of dog you kind of want in the locker room, where he's a guy you got to tell him whoa, rather than tell him go in that kind of equation. So, it is what it is. It happened, and look, Calvin was different.
Yeah,
even when they were in full speed for the production that was on the field, for everything else, for the conversations we've had. I'll be the first one to tell you, a guy that age range, I did not think it was a good business to give him that big of a contract.
Agreed.
So let the Titans have it. Have fun. Good luck in Tennessee. But with that said, he was different.
Yeah.
He is vastly different than the competition. And that's not a shot at Christian Kirk or anybody. His skill set was just his ability to start and be at full and get to full speed was different.
Yeah.
And it's not like just I said it. It's not like just you said it. Everybody that saw him could visually see it. Even the coaches. Like, this dude was different than what we had.
And I remember Doug Peterson saying multiple times, we got to tell Kelvin to slow it down. I mean, we got to wind him back. I mean, he's only been
back. Good.
This is only, his third week of training camp or being back out, and he's going full speed. We're trying to rein Calvin back in because this guy been out of football a year and a half, and it's a long, long process.
It is.
That was interesting to hear Doug saying, hey, we got to wind Calvin back in this process.
You can't ramp it up too long because it's a long season.
Long season.
And it's the team that's fresh at the end that wins it. And as you saw from the Jaguars last year, they were not fresh at the end. Injuries hit in the second half, and the thing fell apart. Train went off the track. They got to find a way to be that fresh team late in the season.
Yep.
So we'll see. We'll be keeping an eye on to see if they do anything differently. That we got a couple more OTAs, and then June the Jaguars will roll into mandatory minicamp, so we get a week of that. So we'll have plenty of content coming your way from that. And then they kind of go on their break. Now, historically, Doug does not make minicamp actually mandatory. Since he's been in Jacksonville, veteran players get minicamp off. It's basically rookies and some of the guys that are battling for roster spots that spend the week for minicamp.
Although Foyer did pop up last year.
Foyer did. And but Foyer was one of those guys where the coaching staff basically said, look, we got to send this dude home.
Right.
Because he works so hard. They called him James Brown because he was the hardest working man in football, hardest working man in showbiz for the people that don't know the James Brown reference. So we'll have plenty of coverage from all that coming. I like to say we have the most coverage, most Jaguars coverage out of anybody.
Right.
I don't like to say it. I know we do. We got the podcast. We get more interviews after practice than everybody else. We got digital write-ups, so you pick your poison, whatever you want. We got it, and we got more of it than anybody else. So if you're not checking out News4JAGs.com and clicking on that sports page, I don't really know what you're doing. And can you really call the Jaguars your favorite team at that point? I'm not saying, but I'm saying. And that's not a shot at anybody else. I'm just saying what it is. So, hey, thanks for hanging out with us on another episode of the News4JAGs podcast. We'll see you next time.